started because we've got so much good stuff to get through. And briefly, hi, I'm Beck Stern Rosenblatt. I know all of you and I like all of you. If you're watching on Facebook and I don't know you or you don't know me, I am the North American faculty in residence for the conservative yeshiva at the Fuchsberg Jerusalem Center. And yes, that title is too long to fit on a business card. Um, so what that means is I get to teach for what I think is one of the best organizations in the world. We do all sorts of learning in person in Jerusalem. It's text-based learning. We also do offer online programs. You can come learn Parshat HaShavua with me. You can come learn Hebrew, which Sylvia is going to be jumping on. And what we get to do today, thanks to the Jewish Collaborative, is do a pretty odd reading of the Shema. Now, like, if there's one Jewish prayer you say in your life, it's probably this one. If there's a Jewish prayer you say many times every day, it's this one. And what we're going to be doing today is reading it as if it were said by Jacob's children to Jacob. Stop, pause. There are more of you here than I can see. I think I know all of you, which means you know what I'm going to ask you, which is to say, I don't like talking to myself. Put your faces on. Let me see your face, because I'm going to give a little intro, but then we're making this happen together, and I am so interested in what y'all have to say. Hey, Ellen, nice to see you. Tov. So, got a big long source sheet, which we will get through some of. I'm going to share it in the chat, and Madalena, if you could share it on Facebook, that would be great. We're going to start off with just looking at the Shema itself in context. And my question to you starting out is there anything in this text, just the text that we're going to read, that says, oh yes, it totally makes sense to think of this as Jacob's children addressing him? Like, when we'll look at the Midrash that does that and say, okay, what are they standing on? Why would they get there? For my people here, are you up for some of the Hebrew, or should we do this in English? Hebrew, English.
I don't know. I mean, I know, me.
All right, I'm gonna sprinkle some Hebrew in and watch you guys' faces, and if you look like, all right, Marcia Saltz says Hebrew, and I'm going with Marcia Saltz because she's the only one who responded to me. So we're in Deuteronomy, towards the beginning of Deuteronomy. Moses is talking to the Israelites as they're standing on the edge of Canaan, Plains Moab, ready to enter into Canaan, but first Moses has to talk for an entire book. And in this case, what Moses says is, these are all these laws, all sorts of laws, asher tzivah Hashem Elohechem lelemed etchem, which your God has commanded to teach to you all. Why? What's the purpose of it? Lasot ba'aretz asher atem ovrim shama l'rishta, in order to do them, to carry them out in the land which you are crossing over to inherit, to possess. For what purpose? Leman tira et Hashem Elohecha lishmor et kol hukotav umitzvotav asher anochi mitzavecha eta uvincha uvin v'necha kol yemei chayecha, so that you're going to fear or respect or have awe for God, your God, and keep all of his commandments, which I am commanding not just you, but also your child or your children and the children of your children for all the days of your life. For what purpose? Leman ya'arichun yamecha, so that you may increase your days, which usually has the connotation of some that you may increase your days that you dwell in the land. We don't have that specifically here. It continues, and this is why it's worth doing it in the Hebrew. It continues, V'shemata Yisrael, and you will hear and you shall hear, Israel. But that's Shema Yisrael in different terms. V'shemarta, and you v'shemarta lasod, and you will observe and you will keep doing asher yitav lecha, what will be good for you. V'asher tirbun me'od, so that you will become very, very many, so that you will, but this is a like have a lot of kids word. כאשר דיבר השם אלוהיך אבותיך לך ארץ זבת חלב ודבש. Just as God, the God of your fathers, the God of your ancestors, spoke to you all, you'll have this land flowing with milk and honey. All right, intro, and then we're about to get to the Shema Yisrael. So far, just from this intro, talk to me. What's going on that with the idea of, or from which you might decide that this is going to be about Jacob and his children? Is there anything here for that to come from, that to stand on? I mean, Midrash is going to do it, but why are they doing it? What are they drawing from here that would get us to this idea of fathers and children, get us to this idea of located specifically with Jacob and his children? Do you see anything? I mean, Midrash is crazy. Reasonable answer. What have you guys got? The way it works is raise a physical hand and I'll call on you, but we're also tiny, so I'm looking at you. Yeah, Stuart, start us off. Remember to unmute. Oh, Stuart, unmute.
God is labeled as the God of the ancestors, which draws out, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Jacob, of course, is the direct, patriarch of the 12 tribes who are about to occupy the land of Israel.
Okay, nice. So when we're talking about God, we're talking about God of your fathers, your ancestors. And so there's a Jacob connection. Interesting. Keep pushing it. What else have you got? Richard, was that a hand, or you just, nice to see you also?
That was hi, nice to see you. That was my Snoopy cup. But I assume that you mentioned that these were also the words that that the son said to Jacob at his deathbed.
Well, yeah, so that's what the Midrash is going to say. And we're saying, what is the Midrash standing on? Why would they put that? Why would they get there from the text? Okay, so why now? Why this? What is it about the promise made to the patriarchs? Yeah, Ellen, go for it.
The people are about to enter the land. They've been all together in the desert, but it might be that Jacob or someone is concerned about them running all over the place, not staying together as one people. And whoever it is trying to get over the idea that they are one people with one God. And God's establishing his street cred again.
Ooh, nice. Okay. So we're on this precipice where we're going from like desert people, and if you don't follow Moses, you got problems because there's nothing to eat, to people in a land where we can survive ourselves more or less. And God has to once again say, okay, when you get into this land and there's milk and honey and the streets are paved with gold, then remember the reason you're there is because of me. And what's more, the reason you're there is because of the promise I made to your forefathers, right? That this is the fulfillment of the promise I made to Abraham, I made to Isaac, I made to Jacob, that I would give the land to their descendants. And it's finally happening, right? Twofold promise in Genesis, land and descendants. In Genesis, we see at the very end of Genesis, finally, we get all those descendants. We get the 70-ish descendants of Jacob. We haven't yet gotten the land. Right now, we are about to finally end. So the Shema here is calling us back to that idea that, okay, this is a fulfillment of that promise. Interesting. Anybody else? Anything else? What is it about like fathers and sons here? Is there anything interesting going on with that? Yes, Stuart.
Well, I recall there was also a conflict in terms of the maternal descent, because there was a clash between the brothers descended, from Rachel, Benjamin and Joseph, and the others descended, from Leah. So maybe, it's a reminder that it's one, the 12 tribes are one united people.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So this is not a 12 tribes thing. This is a we are all one thing. We all come from the same father. That this is my nice glossing over Avotenu or Avotav and making it that your foreparents instead of forefathers. Right now we're talking about forefathers, and the fact that you have different moms doesn't matter. Okay.
You know what?
Rhea and then Richard.
Okay. There were two tribes that wanted to stay across on the side of the river that they're now at. It's not crossover. And then they feel an obligation in the story in Torah. So there's something appealing about not going. They know that they're where they know it's what it's like. It's not desert where they are right now. And so, and they I don't know if they've been told they were going to have to wipe out all those people once they got in. But the storytellers, the Midrash storytellers, know that is going to happen. So I don't know if any of that has to do with trying to consolidate them into that they have this one God.
Interesting. Yeah. So we've got the 2.5 tribes who don't want to cross, or who say, hey, what if we just stay here, right? We've got Reuben, Gad, and half tribe of Manasseh, which is going to be interesting, particularly with Reuben as we get through to the Midrash. But I'm going to leave that dangling for now. Richard, and then we're going to keep going.
Okay. I'm going to point out two interesting things from last week's Parsha, which happened to be Bamidbar. When they came up with the list of tribes and the population of each tribe, the biggest tribe was Judah. Right. Now, if you remember, before they all went down to Egypt, Judah had, one son and then another son, and God doesn't like some of their nocturnal activities, and so he knocks them off. So supposedly Judah, maybe with Tamar, went down to Egypt, but 210 years later, he's the strongest tribe with 75,000 people.
Fantastic.
Interesting side point.
And to some degree relevant, right? I think, Stuart, you were pointing out that we have this tension happening where for much of the Torah, we're talking about sons or tribes. And I mean, definitely, Richard, in last week's Parashah, but for this entire book of Bamidbar, we're talking about this tribe and that tribe and the tribal relations and who does what and what the Levites can do and what the sub-tribes within the Levites, what Korach can or cannot do. Right. We get to Deuteronomy and we're saying, okay, Tov, we built up a nation out of 12 tribes. I'm now addressing you again as a nation. There's something really unifying about this. It's no longer about what the duties and responsibilities of each tribe or sub-tribe. It's about the whole Torah, which was commanded to all of you as you all are entering the land. Nice. And I think there's something in that about why it might be tempting to take this back to Jacob and his sons, right? To take his, like, it's not just, I'm not talking to Reuben, I'm not talking to Manasseh, I'm talking to all the sons of Israel, all the sons of Jacob. Okay, so really quick, I'm going to continue. We are Deuteronomy 6, verse 4, the bit you've all been waiting for. We get Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Now, just there's a lot really interesting going on here. Just the thing that our class today hinges on is what you do with the word Israel here, right? Is Israel like vocative? Are we addressing Israel? Is Moses addressing Israel here? Is God addressing Israel? Is Moses addressing Israel in God's words? And with all of that, then like why is this something that we, Israel, are going to repeat and say? The fact that Israel appears in this verse is weird, right? Like here, God's God, God's one, or God is the only one makes sense. Why we need to put Israel in and what Israel is doing. Sylvia?
I think that maybe I'm going to go back a little to the basics because I'm not sure. Wasn't the Shema originally what his sons said to him on his deathbed when he said, don't forget our Father,
Yeah, so Sylvia, that's in the Midrash that we're about to read. It's not in the Torah itself, and I love that you know that because you and I have actually learned this together in a Pre-Shavuot class once upon a time.
That's how I knew it. I knew there was a reason.
But yeah, so this is in the Torah text itself. No, this just appears here. In the Midrash, they're going to put it into the mouths of Jacob's sons. Stuart.
I have a gut feeling that this has something to do with the incident of Jacob wrestling with the angel, where there was a name change to Israel. And so from that point onward, I think, we're all wrestling with God or struggling with God or, we're servicing God or worshiping God, under that name of Israel.
Interesting. Okay. And we'll see how that gets touched on. I'm going to keep going so that we actually get to this Midrash. I keep name dropping. So we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's weird what Israel is doing in that sentence. Then the Shema continues for a couple of paragraphs. I'm just going to bring you the next couple of verses, which is I'm translating, and you must love God, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your being, and let these things which I am commanding you today be on your heart. And then this is important, verse 7, and you shall teach them to your children. And you're going to speak about them when you're lying down in your house and when you're when you're dwelling in your house and when you're going on your way and when you're lying down and when you're waking up. And then it keeps going, you guys. You know how it goes. But yeah, Richard, so that's the Ve'ahavta. It's the first paragraph of the full reading of the Shema. Yefeh. Okay, so let's jump into the Midrash. This is now the second source. I'm going to just, for people who may have come in later, I'm going to share the source sheet again.
Oh, thank you.
We're in a Midrash called the Sifrei for Devarim for Deuteronomy. They're talking about our verse, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And they say, Lama ne'emar, why is this said? And now I'm going to do this in English. I might jump back to the Hebrew if we need it, but for the most part, I'll be working in the English with you guys. So why is this said? It's written in Exodus 25:2. It says, speak to Bnei Israel. It says, speak to the children of Israel, and it doesn't say there, speak to the children of Abraham and Isaac, but rather just to the children of Israel. Okay, stop, pause. No, of course it does, right? Like, we talk about Bnei Israel all the time. We talk about, that's how we say Israelites, Bnei Israel. We don't say Bnei Avraham. We don't say the Abrahamites or the Isaacites. Like, obviously, that's how we talk. And yet the Midrash is picking up on that and saying, no, here it's important. So jump down to the next source, source 3. This is Exodus 25. It's an important one. I'm going to do this one in the Hebrew. So back in Exodus, back Mount Sinai style. V'daber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and God spoke to Moses, saying, Deber el bnei Israel, speak to the children of Israel, the Israelites. And that's what our Midrash is commenting on. And what are you supposed to say to these children of Israel? You're supposed to say, V'chu li tuma, and bring to me a donation, a gift, me'at kol ish yidavenu libo, from every person whose heart moves him, who wants to. Tichu et trumati, let them take from me my gift donation. And then what are you going to do with all these gifts, all these donations? Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'tocham. Make me a sanctuary, and I will dwell among you. Okay, so this is the building of the tabernacle. There's many places where Bnei Israel, where the term Israelite shows up. Our Midrash is going to take the term, be talking about the term Bnei Israel within the context of making God's sanctuary. That's interesting. What do you do with that? Why is it interesting? Why? I mean, we could have talked, Bnei Israel shows up in Pharaoh's mouth. It shows up in a lot of other places. Why does our Midrash come and take it from this make me a sanctuary verse, this make me a sanctuary chapter? How might you relate the command of God's to make him a sanctuary, or make God a sanctuary, back to the Shema? What happens when you put those two texts in context or in conversation? God says, make me a sanctuary, and later we're going to say the Shema. How are those two related? What happens when you relate those two texts? Stuart, and all the people who are hiding, I know you're there. I love Stuart to pieces, and he has brilliant comments, but so do the rest of you.
If I recall correctly, didn't Jacob promise to build God an altar at Bethel when Jacob had his dream of the ladder and the angels ascending and descending? And I think that was the first promise made to God, to build an altar or a sanctuary in the land of Israel.
Fantastic. Yes, it's not the first time that an altar has been built to God, but it is the first time that we get this promise to build an altar, that if you do this, then I'll do that. Yefeh. Okay, Rhea.
So in Joshua, every time there's a whole load of, I forget how many, where they put up stones and it's a sanctuary to God. So does this have anything to do with that, which is not the concept of the one sanctuary that they carry around with them, and God dwells in one place, the one God in one place? I don't know. It just, that's all.
Great. Okay. I think you're onto something, right? I think there's something interesting going on from Deuteronomy to Joshua, where if we mapped out like in numbers, we're talking tribes. In Deuteronomy, we're talking one people. As we get into Joshua and the nitty-gritty, very quickly, we're talking tribes again, and the way we represent ourselves, the way we act, the way who does what is a tribal thing as well. So within that, the Shema as a moment of unity, and also the Exodus text, the build me a mikdash moment of unity. Okay, nice. So the both of these, like what the Shema is, what the make me a mikdash is this moment where we are in relationship with God, and who are we? We are one. We are united, complete people. Okay. Anything else with the why choosing the term Israelite from this make me a mikdash text? Any other thoughts? So, sorry, Ellen, was that a half thought, half tribe of Menashe and half thought for Ellen? So let's keep going then. All right, so back to the Midrash. So the Midrash is saying, why does it, so this is source 2, why does it say, hear, O Israel, and not hear, O Abraham or Isaac? Well, because in Exodus 25, in the Make Me a Mikdash text, it says, speak to the children of Israel. And why does it say that? The Midrash continues, because it was Jacob, our father, who merited that this dibor, which is the same word that gets used for like the 10 commandments, this word, this pronouncement should be said to his children. Why? Because for all of his days, Jacob feared, and he said, oy vavoy me, oy vavoy for me, woe unto me, less base matter, this is this solid term, this like canceled stuff, bad stuff, issue from me, just as it did from my fathers. What is he talking about? He said, well, Abraham gave issue, had this child called Ishmael, and Isaac had this child called Esau, my brother, and Ishmael worshipped Avodah Zarah, he worshipped idol worship, and so did Esau. And so Jacob's got this real fear that likewise, he's going to have kids who engage in idol worship. And how much more so if each of Abraham and Isaac had 2 kids, one good, one bad. Jacob's now contending with 12 kids, like surely somebody's going to go astray. And as we know, nobody does. Like at the end of the day, all 12 kids are going to come together happy and somehow all engage in worship of God rather than worship of Baal or, Mr. God number 3 from down the street. Okay. So but what this Midrash is basing us in is why are we saying Shema Yisrael? We're saying Shema Yisrael because Jacob, Jacob equals Israel, is better or more deserving in some way than Abraham and Isaac were, because his kids did not engage in idol worship. Why didn't they engage in idol worship? Because he was a worried Jewish father. All right. Let's unpack that a little bit. Okay, so the Midrash keeps going. I'm now on source 4. It says, once again, Abraham had this bad kid, Isaac had this bad kid, but for me, please, and this is Jacob talking, don't let base matter come forth from me as it did from my fathers. And therefore, the Midrash is citing another source. This is Genesis 28. Therefore, Jacob vowed a vow. Okay, what is it talking about when Jacob vowed a vow? Let's go see that in context. And y'all, we're like up to our elbows in Midrash. This is not simple stuff. I appreciate you guys playing Midrash with me. I love playing Midrash, and I'm realizing as I do this, like, this is not like, we're not like, playing nice with a little biblical verse. We are up to our elbows in the guts of Midrash. So, yalla. All right. So, Jacob vows a vow. In context, Jacob's vow, which Stuart actually cited earlier, has nothing to do with what the Midrash is going to make it do. Let's go look in context at what Jacob's vow is. This is Genesis 28. We're in source 5. This is the beautiful Jacob's ladder story. I'm gonna read it quickly for the sake of time. Jacob left Beersheba, set out for Haran. He had this dream. A stairway or a ladder was on the ground. Its top reached to the sky. The messengers or angels of God were going up and down. And then God appears. And God says, and this is important, I am God. Which God? The God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying, I will sign to you and to your offspring. Stop, pause. Okay. So once again, just as we saw in our first text in Deuteronomy, we're locating Jacob between his fathers and his descendants, right? God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and what I'm promising you is descendants. And like, I'm the God, who are you, Jacob? You are an intermediary step between what was before and what will come afterwards. Okay. You're going to have lots and lots of kids. All the families of earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you will go. And important, I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave until I have done what I have promised you. Okay. Once again. Excuse me, Jacob, like, he gets, his bones get taken back to the land, but Jacob's gonna die in Egypt, and Jacob's descendants are going to be in Egypt for hundreds of years. So here, God is making a vow that's not fulfilled until the Shema, until we're standing hundreds of years later with Moses about to enter the land. Tov. Okay. So then in response, God just made Jacob this really beautiful promise. And Jacob, the chutzpahdik guy, turns around and says, Jacob makes a vow to God saying, if you remain with me, God, if you protect me on this journey and give me bread and clothes to eat, and I return safely to my father's house, then you will be my God. And the stone, which I've set up as a pillar, shall be your abode, which is Beit Hashem, the house of God. And all that you give to me, and all that you give to me, I will set aside a tithe for you. Okay. So this incredible chutzpahdik moment with Jacob, where he says, okay, God, you made me a promise. If you fulfill it, great, I'll accept you as my God. I'll make a house for you and I'll set aside a tithe for you. It's not fulfilled until this moment of the Shema. We are up to our elbows in Midrash Gore. Can anybody connect for me, like make sense of this Midrash? Why does the Midrash choose this moment of Jacob chutzpahdik? How does it connect Jacob making this vow to the idea of Jacob having good children and not pasolet, not unworthy children? And how does that relate back to the Shema entering the land? What do all of these disparate texts have to do with each other? What is the logic in our Midrash here? Not an easy question, not a right answer either. One of the reasons I love Midrash is because it's literally the way you make sense of Midrash is you play it like a game. There's never a right answer. You can't recover the exact logic ever, but you play. You see what's going on. Let's go Rhea and then Sylvia and then Stuart.
Yeah, I'm sorry for talking so much, but I couldn't help But this is quid pro quo.
Okay.
And that there's Jacob's going to do this nice thing for God, and God's going to do this. But that's the bargaining aspect of you in the Torah's concept of relationship between the chosen person and God, where there's this give and take. So it continues in that vein in this Midrash. And so anyway, that's it.
Oh, Rhea, I love it. Fantastic. Okay, so there's this idea, right, that Jacob is this guy who can push back against God and say, God, I'm not sure I'm going to take you. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to say, like, okay, God, you're my God, unless you pull through, unless you actually deliver. And then when we get to Deuteronomy and God is actually delivering, then we can have the children of Jacob turning back to Jacob and saying, listen, God delivered. God made good on the promise. And now we can fulfill your vow and say, God is our God. God is one. Oh, awesome. Really cool. Okay. Okay. Sylvia and then Stuart.
Well, yeah, that's great. Except for, I think that I'd push this a little further and say that what Jacob's doing is showing us who he actually is. And he's the guy who, isn't he, who stole his brother's birthright, who deluded his father into thinking that Jacob was his brother so he could get the blessing, the firstborn's blessing, and then he had to leave town, and all of so much of what we see about Jacob is his planning, scheming, and doing things for a reward, including his marriage. He negotiated that and said, yes, I'll work for you for 7 years if you give me your daughter. He got deceived, and then he had to redo it, and then he had to run away again. But that's just his life. And so for him to push back is not really a surprise.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Sylvia. And I related to, I think, what someone said, maybe Stuart earlier Stuart, about like, what does it mean that we are the children of Israel? We're the children of this specific guy, this guy who wrestles with God, this guy who pushes back against God, this guy who like makes conditional bargains. And that I think in some of that, it's like another way to say that is a guy who is an equal partner, a guy who can make a covenant that he can keep. That if we think of the Shema as us making a covenant with God, or us like daily saying like, yes, I'm buying into this system. And if you're familiar with the thought, like after the following prayer, the paragraphs of the Shema, it's all like, if you do this, then I will give you rain in your season, and I will do this and I will do that. It's very much like covenantal language. It's very much bargaining with God language, the same way that Jacob is here. Really cool. Okay. Stuart. And then Richard.
I see this as the final fulfillment of God's oath, by extracting, the Hebrews from Egypt and allowing them entry into the promised land. So God has fulfilled, that oath. It's an open question whether or not the Israelites will keep, Jacob's vow, of setting up a sanctuary and worshiping God faithfully.
Oh, amazing.
Hanger.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay, great. Like, God's fulfilled his half, and we're saying, okay, God will fulfill your half, maybe. Like, we'll try. We'll do our best. But I mean, again, it's going to be hundreds of years before we actually build God's house in Jerusalem. Yafet. Awesome, Richard. Awesome, Stuart. Now, Richard. Richard, are you there? Oh, nope.
I'm sorry, I got unmuted. I had muted. Okay. Haven't we already been made these promises before? This is not original with Jacob. This has been promised to Abraham, to Isaac, etc. So I don't know that Jacob is saying, if you do all this for me, then I'll build you a house. I think it's sort of like the situation is reversed. God's already done this for the people, and now he's giving a final, okay, I've been doing all this for you people. Now this is what I'm asking you. I don't think Jacob is bargaining.
Interesting. Okay, I'm going to push back against you a little bit, Richard.
Okay.
You're totally right. This is like, we've gotten these promises before.
Right.
We haven't had these promises fulfilled yet, right? We haven't gotten the land. We won't get the land for hundreds of years. In fact, Abraham was told, and before you get the land, by the way, your children are going to be, or your descendants are going to be slaves.
That's right.
And so, yes, we're getting the promises given once again, but we aren't getting the promises fulfilled. We're just getting the promises given. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let's keep moving because we're like halfway through all this. This Midrash is just incredible. It's crazy. It's really good. All right, let's keep going. I'm now source 6. So we were talking about very quickly finishing source 4. We said Jacob vowed a vow. We looked at the vow actually in context. But then what the Midrash does with the vow is say, what is Jacob really saying? He's not just saying, like, let God do all this stuff and then it'll be good. He's also saying, well, let God be mine, let him be my God, such that no base matter issue from me, such that I don't have any bad children. That the only way God can only actually be my God, the only way that God can live up to his end of the bargain is if I don't have an Ishmael, if I don't have an Esau. All right. Then jumping to source 6. Uh-oh, Jacob has a bad kid. That bad kid's name is Reuben, and it is written, source 6, when Israel dwelt in the land. I'm going to read source 7, which is the what the Midrash here is citing. And it was when Israel was dwelling in that land. And that dwelling in the land phrase, like that's the Shema phrase, right? We just got that in the Shema. Richard, I'm so interested in that, but we don't have time. Okay, so it was when Israel is dwelling in the land that Reuben went and he lay, and that's once again, like that's the second ve'ahavta word we've used so far, right? We have vishkon to dwell, and now we have vishkav to lie down, right? I'm gonna read you that ve'ahavta line once again. It's I'll read it in English. You shall teach it to your children, and you shall speak it to them when you dwell in your house and when you're on your way and when you lie down and when you wake up. And so that's what you're supposed to do with the Shema. Then we have, what is Reuben doing? Well, Jacob is dwelling in the land, and Reuben is lying with his dad's concubine, his like second mother, his auntie, however you want to English that. He is doing bad stuff. Don't try this at home, unless you're Richard, who apparently thinks that's good. Tough. And what happens? The Yishma Yisrael, and Israel heard. And what do you hear in that verse, right? That's Shema Yisrael, right? Israel heard. The Yishma Yisrael. Oh my God. So here we have all these Shema words coming right back at us. What is the context? The context is, instead of dwelling securely in our land and teaching it to our children, rather Jacob's child is lying with his concubine, and Jacob hears. Voila. Crazy. Okay. And the number of Jacob's kids of the Bnei Yaakov, interesting that's Bnei Yaakov and not Bnei Israel, right? The number of the children of Jacob were 12 in number. Okay. back to the Midrash, back to what the Midrash is going to do with the section I just read to you. So, source 6, it was when Israel was dwelling in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah and his father's concubine, and Israel. And the Midrash continues saying, when Jacob heard this, he shuddered and said, can it be that there is base matter? There's this pasolet in my sons? Is Reuben this like same as Ishmael, same as Esau? Is he the like one I've been worried about? And the Midrash then has God responding that no, you don't. Reuben repented. Reuben changed. And how do we know that? Because the next verse that I read was that the Bnei Yaakov were 12 in number. The children of Jacob were 12 in number, so that Reuben still counted as one of the sons of Jacob, and therefore Reuben must have done something different. Reuben must have repented. And the Midrash continues, we are taught from this that Reuben afflicted himself all of his days because of that act until Moses accepted his penitence. And that we get in the very end of Deuteronomy. We get these blessings given by Moses to the 12 tribes, very similar to the blessings that Jacob gave to his 12 sons. What Moses says about Reuben is, Yechi Reuven va'al yamot. May Reuben live and not die. Okay, so that from this, the Midrash is saying, we still count Reuben. We still like Reuben. Reuben is still one of Jacob's sons. Reuben is not pasolet. Reuben is not base matter. Jacob, you don't need to worry about it. It comes back to what, Richard, you brought up the book of Numbers, right? The beginning, the first parashat, B'midbar, one of the things that happens, and this is just because it happened, we happen to be in that time period. One of the things that happens between in B'midbar and then also in this week's parasha is we see Reuben lose his first tribe status and get replaced by Judah. Like, we're keeping Reuben, but there's a punishment. And we see Reuben's numbers go down. Anyway, okay. So then getting to the main event, I'm going to be talking at you guys a little bit. I'm sorry. This isn't how I normally teach, but this Midrash is too good and we just got to get through it. So, next part of the Midrash, source 9. So, thus, therefore, we find that before Jacob was passing from the world, he called his sons and rebuked them individually, and then called all of them as one and said, can it be that there is some reservation in your hearts about him who spoke and brought the world into being? So Jacob's still scared. Jacob's still like, okay, maybe my sons are pasolet. Maybe even if Reuben is repenting, like there's still something that perhaps is wrong. Jacob has this real fear about his sons. And the Midrash has them answering with the Shema. They say, Shema Israel, hear Jacob, hear Daddy, hear Israel, just as there's no reservation in your heart, so there's none in ours, but rather, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. But rather, God is one and God is the only one, or God is singular. And like many of you said at the beginning, just as God is one and singular, so too are we united with you, for you, so too are all 12 of us, one nation for you. And then the Midrash goes on and says, and Israel bowed at the head of the bed. That's going back to Genesis 47, the 10th source, where Jacob is about to die and makes Joseph swear to him to bring his body back to the land of Israel. And Joseph swears to him. And after Joseph swears to him, Israel, V'yishtachu Yisrael el rosh hamita, and Israel bows at the head of the bed. It's a weird phrase. We don't know why it appears. The Midrash is saying that when Jacob is bowing at the head of the bed here, he's bowing in response to his kids having said the Shema. He's bowing like in thankfulness to God that his kids have expressed that they will take on his God as their God, that they are not Pasolet, that they are not the base matter. All right, I'm going to do two more sources really quick from the end of Genesis. These are, one more source really quick from the end of Genesis. This is the blessing that Jacob gives to his kids. This is source 11. And Jacob called to his sons, and he said, gather and let me tell you all what will happen at the end of days. And then it continues, Hikapsu v'shimu b'nei Yaakov v'shim'u el Yisrael avichem. So that's that Shema, Shema, Shema word again, right? Gather and listen, gather and listen, gather and listen. And then he critiques Reuben right away, and yet still Reuben has shown up, Reuben has listened, and we have Reuben then with all of his 11 brothers reciting Shema Yisrael. Okay, y'all, we did it. We got through the entire Midrash. Now we get to actually talk about this and make meaning of it and like figure out why this matters. Richard, start us out, and then we'll go to Stuart, and just coming back into this idea that the 12 sons of Jacob are saying this to Jacob, are directly addressing their dad and saying, listen, Dad, God is our God, God is one. Talk back to the idea that what this is about is like parental anxiety, is about how to pass the inheritance from parent to child, how to think of yourself as a link in the chain, what that does to the idea of the Shema. And specifically also why Jacob. Richard, and then Stuart, and then we'll see.
I'm so glad you read that verse. I love that particular verse about gather around me and I shall tell you what will happen in the days to come. He's about to prophesy and then all of a sudden he stops. I've always loved that verse. He was about to reveal to them the end of days, and maybe God took away his gift of prophecy for that moment so he didn't spill the beans.
Yafei. And that's, we're not going to get to the source because we don't have time, but the very last source on the page is saying just that. It's from the Talmud, Pesachim. It's worth reading after class. Awesome. Okay, Stuart, and then Sylvia.
No, I don't think that Jacob's fear of his offspring stemmed exclusively from the fact that Reuven, cuckolded, Jacob with Bilhah. But I think, the anxiety was deeper than that, because if you talk about the offspring, okay, a couple of the sons, massacred, the Shechemites, and 10 of the sons hijacked Jacob. Hijacked, Joseph to Egypt. So I think the issue goes deeper than that, and I think maybe he was reassured, because then when all of his offspring were gathered together, they all swore that oath to be loyal to God, because really, at least 10 out of the 12 were guilty as sin.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so when we look at the children of Jacob, we know he has at least 13 kids, right? The 12 sons and Dinah. And we know that basically any time they act as individuals or as small groups, they mess up. That these are kids who do really, really, really horrible things, or who have really, really horrible things happen to them. And I think, Stuart, I think you're onto something there, right? That any of the stories of Genesis that are about individuals among these 12 kids, or about Shimon Levi doing horrible things to the people, these are bad stories. And it's not until we get to the 12 sons united in Egypt, with Joseph having forgiven them and them having been okay with Joseph, that we were able to move into this concept of Bnei Israel. We're able to say, okay, we get to the Israelite people, and that there's something really powerful about reading that as the Shema, right? The Shema is this moment where we say, okay, like individually, you know what? I've messed up. I have done horrible things. I have made a mess. And when I say the Shema, what I'm doing is saying, well, I'm trying to, one, apologize for my individual problems, my individual wrongdoings, and say, as part of a greater collective, I am better, I can be better, and we will be better because your beliefs, your aspirations are my beliefs and aspirations, and I'm going to pass that down. Awesome. Cool. Okay. Sylvia.
Oh, good. I think I'm going to take it one step further. When Jacob is still having all of these fears about his sons, I think there's a very good possibility that he's projecting all of his sins onto them because, you know, as we see, he's not the greatest guy in the world. He's had a lot of problems in his life and done a lot of bad things. So I'm thinking that this is almost a projection and a way of saying to them and to God that if you can get yourselves together, I will be redeemed too. I mean, then I can die in peace. And I also that like a modern day, his sons are like a modern day support group. We're together, we're okay. You know, if you like for people who are in 12-step programs, they always tell you if you stop going to meetings, you're probably going to mess up. And why is that? Is because you're into your own head and your own old ways. And so as they were together, they got to be better. And they could reassure and make amends to their father, you know, really basically, as you said, apologize to him and to Hashem that who they were and what they're wanting to do now. They want to do now.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and that works well with the Jacob's fear of this base matter. Like maybe like, I mean, can you imagine how messed up that is? Sitting there looking at your kids being like, which one of you is the screw up? And what the Shema is doing is coming and saying, no, so they're all kind of the screw up. But together they're deciding not to screw up. And they're forgiving you for your screw ups, and they're holding you to be something better and saying that they will also teach their children to be better. Yafet. Okay. Rhea and then Ellen.
So added on to continue that Bilba, somebody that oops. Okay, I got it. Okay. So anyway, what about Bilba and apologizing to her and making amends to the family, the tribe that they slaughtered all these men and their animals and everything. So it leaves it leaves things undone. And I'm sure the Midrash writers weren't even thinking of this, but how would we continue with this story? Because you can't just hide back into your family and say everything's okay. This does not feel okay.
Okay, yeah, and awesome, Rhea. So that it's not just, okay, I forgive you, you forgive me, we have better goals. It's how do we actually live those better goals? And how do we live up to our goals? How do we live up to our aspirations? And that, yes, we will fail constantly, but we have to keep ourselves to those aspirations. And when we fail, those failures have consequences, and we have to deal with those consequences as well. One of the things that's actually pretty great about Midrash is it does sometimes go on and address, like, and even the Tanakh itself goes on and we see the consequences, like bad consequences for bad actions. But great point. Okay. Ellen, and then we've got to close, which is crazy.
It's almost as if all 12 sons are including Jacob and whoever else within their family, because they say the Lord, our God, the Lord is one. And by including, they're saying our God, not just your God or Abraham's God or whoever, but they're all together in this. And so there's a uniting force behind them. And when Israel says, the children of Israel say together, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, they're including themselves within the same family as Jacob's family and whoever else went before them. That's all.
Nice. Yes. Awesome. And what I want, building on what you're saying, Ellen, I want to leave you guys with how you understand the Shema. If you're saying it today, if you say it daily, whenever you say it, how you understand it as words you're repeating from the mouth of Reuben, from the mouth of Joseph, from the mouth of Ephraim, from the mouth of whichever one of Joseph's kids or the collective of Joseph's kids. What it means to say that, what it feels like imagining yourself not as one of Joseph's kids, but as yourself addressing your own parents and saying that, which for me has been really powerful, thinking about like telling, the way I imagine it is telling one of my grandfathers it, but it's a really powerful experience, and I want to invite you to try it. And I hope you guys have my email. I'm gonna put my email in the chat just in case you don't. And it looks like we have all these people who are entering now because they thought it was now, which is too bad. They can watch the recording. Welcome. Sorry. And I won't see you next week. You're not my class I see weekly. I will see you next time I teach you. Sylvia, I'll see you all the time. And
Can't get rid of me. Bad Penny. What can I say?
if you have thoughts, please email me. I love reading your further thoughts. Shavuot Sameach. May we all hear good tidings. And Shavuot Tov. Bye, guys.
Samantha, thank you so much. Beautiful class.